So, are you ready to do your thing?
I'm ready.
Great, great. Well, thanks for joining me, Jeannine. This is the forecast where we connect with the future one person at a time. And I'm really happy to have you on the line. So welcome to the forecast. I, of course, know a bit about what you do and who you are, but for the listeners of the forecast, will you tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're up to?
Alex, I have to tell you, I hate this question. I've hated this question all of my life. When I was in college, we used to go around the room at the University of Georgia in Athens, and they would say, tell us your name and a little about yourself. And one time I got so disgusted with the question, I just stood up and I said, my name is Jeannine, and I am not fixing to do anything.
They must have loved that.
Well, it was slightly offensive and provocative, and I've been known to do that. But in any event, my name is Jeannine van Linden. I run a network of co-working spaces in the Netherlands. We have 5 locations. We just launched a partner location, which is a partnership with an existing serviced office, which is an interesting development. And in the rest of my free time, I am the managing partner of Open Coworking, which is coworking.com, which is an organization created by the co-working community to provide resources and support for co-working spaces all over the world.
Okay.
And in November at Co-working Europe, we took over and I became, the president of the European Co-working Assembly, which is a group that attempts to represent co-working federations and co-working spaces all over Europe. And so that keeps me pretty busy between the existing org and the takeover. So that's what I've been doing with co-working lately.
All right. So 2 new American presidents.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm hoping to have a little less chaos in my wake.
Sure, great. So, what's changed in the co-working world other than you being the new president? How are things going?
Well, I think in the European Co-working Assembly, we're having a lot of conversations with a lot of different stakeholders because the original org had some fairly specific goals, which involved lobbying and advocating on a European level.
Right.
Since then, we've had Brexit, we've had a number of changes, some shifts in terms of the role of the EU, and I think that under the new organization, we are we're talking to all the stakeholders to figure out sort of exactly how to give shape to that. One of the projects I think that people are very interested in, I'm very interested in, is the subject of co-working outside of large cities. We call it rural co-working. It's not really rural, but we don't have another good term for it. That is co-working in cities, towns, and villages less than 50,000 population. And right. The way of co-working, the model of co-working, my first space is in Oosterhout, which has substantially less than 50,000 people in it. And sometimes, I listen to people. I have a location in Amsterdam, and the way we go about co-working in Amsterdam is completely not the same as the way we go about co-working in Oosterhout. You can't. It's very, very different. And I find that really interesting. And I think there's a great need for sort of leadership in terms of best practices, in terms of getting people together all over Europe. I'm hearing from people that this is a subject they really want to talk about.
Sure. I guess the co-working world and focus has been changing since the beginning. The humble beginnings in West Coast America, and the last few years, a lot of the big international and multinational co-working in inverted commas chains have a lot of columns in the newspapers. But yeah, there are lots of people who aren't the typical startup. There are lots of people who are freelancers and remote workers and people who don't want to go into the middle of town. So I think it's for them as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of my spaces is in Den Bosch in the Netherlands, and what Den Bosch is famous for is logistics. It's famous for some other things, but because of its location in the Netherlands, it's very convenient for logistics, and it has a very large sort of logistics infrastructure built into it. My Den Bosch location is about retail. It is specifically about internet retail and internet services. The businesses that are there are probably 80% doing that. And so the challenge of how do you talk about a co-working space with people whose business literally requires no space and does not actually happen in a space has been one of the more interesting conversations of my work with co-working so far. I love retail, but it's a very, very, this is not, and I just tell people when they call about my Den Bosch space, this is not where you walk by in your blue jeans with your hip Apple computer. I mean, these guys are walking around in like we're talking about forklifts and large trucks. We're talking about we're talking about fiber optic cable. We're talking about a lot of things, but we are definitely not talking about, chicks in short skirts serving you coffee. That's not what we're talking about. So
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, right. All of those people want to co-work too. The other population that I find really interesting in my spaces is people who are, I guess, in the UK, you call them in the trades. In the Netherlands, it's the ambacht. Listen, your painters, your roof guys, your floor guys. Number one, those guys need a business location. They like to have a professional business location where their clients can come to, where their shipments can come to, and they can come pick them up. Those guys have never worked in an office. They're not going to start now. They work in your house while they're painting it. Yeah. And but it's good to have a place where people can go to, a central place where things go. So, they like co-working too. And one of the lessons that I have learned is that those fellas know how to network. Those fellas make the people in offices look like pikers in terms of networking. Those fellas know how to network in a deep way. They know about alignment of values. They know about alignment of quality. They know about a lot of things. And I have learned a great deal from them. And I really like having them in my co-working spaces.
That's really interesting. I think, for us in the industry, we definitely see co-working as more of a mindset and a behavior, and rather than a physical space. And I think a lot of the media focuses on the physical space, and it is a part of it. But I think even in these places, I feel these people are really embodying the values of co-working, this community element, the openness, all of those things. And it's great to see, and that's why I wanted to speak to you. It's great to see the diversity in co-working spaces that we have, and bring attention to that. It's not just the startups and the dating apps. You've also even got, builders and electricians. And, we did a co-working bus tour of Hamburg just last week. And there were a number of tours in Hamburg. And some of them did go to co-working spaces and communities that focused on the trades, which was great to see, as well as the big startup stuff. So I think definitely the movement is picking up pace now.
Yeah, I think so. I get a lot of teasing actually from my guys that are in the ambacht, because I have a dream. I have a dream today, and one of my dreams, I want to go to Rotterdam. It has to be Rotterdam, and because I love Rotterdam. And Rotterdam is a true world city. People don't know it. But I want to go to Rotterdam, and I want to have a makerspace, and I want to have a makerspace where this is the thing that my guys showed me is what they need some very expensive tools, for example. And they need some fairly expensive equipment. And if you can buy that as a community and work with it as a community, the stuff that gets created with it is amazing. And 3D printer, yes, of course, because that's cool. But also welder, right? I want welding equipment. I want all of that stuff, and I want it in my space in Rotterdam. And so I don't know when I'm going to build it, but it's coming.
Well, that's good to know. We need ambitions, and we need to think big. And thinking big is, I think, something that's been there in the co-working scene since the beginning, thinking big. But it's good to see also that there's small companies, there's small groups, there's small communities, even outside big cities, even in villages like yours, those people are also thinking big. So yeah, it's great. It's great to hear, and I think a lot of the people that can listen to this forecast will definitely be encouraged to hear that there are spaces for all kinds of people in different parts of Europe, and I feel that that's what the assembly is there to do. It's there to represent the diversity in co-working spaces and the people in communities across Europe. Would you say that's a fair assumption?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we said way in the beginning, when we were on the Having Our Dreams about location independent, it wasn't necessarily about you can go work with your laptop on a beach in Bali, although, I'm looking forward to that.
Well, that's nice as well.
Yeah, right. But nothing wrong with the beach in Bali. But location independent also means that the whole, I mean, I'm sorry, I have a history kick. The whole sort of industrial revolution move, which emptied um, the countries into the cities and fed people into there. It we can see the movement back out as soon as we sort of get over the psychological barrier. When we say location independent, we're not kidding, right? You can literally live where you want and work where you want, but we have to sort of get over. There's some psychological things that we have to get over, because the flip side of that is people need to see each other. Human beings don't live well purely digitally. I mean, digitally is a nice support, but the fact is most people also need to see each other. A lot of our communication is not verbal. We need to see, we need to hear, right? And I think that co-working in many ways can answer that need as soon as more people see the vision. And not enough people are seeing it.
And that's a good point. I mean, I was going to ask what is the vision and what inspired you to get into this space, but I think you've answered it. I think through your passion for co-working and your passion for connecting with people, I think that comes through, and it's probably been a red line through everything you do. As I said, I run this space. I run Shhared, which is a co-working space and co-working community in Hamburg, northern Germany. And last week we had this co-working bus tour across the city, and we were discussing the benefits and the values of co-working. And of course, people were saying, well, co-working is great to get connected with people. Co-working is great to inspire and support people in their journeys, whatever that would be. Do you also think that co-working can break down barriers between people and help people grow personally?
Well, absolutely, it can, and it will. I mean, it can if we will. If that's the objective of that co-working space, then obviously, yes, of course it can. I think that that all the co-working spaces are slightly different. One of the things that I'm very dedicated to in my own, because I'm managing 5, and I have one as a sort of joint venture, is that I believe this, it's almost a superstition with me. Every place has an identity. It's like a city has a personality. And I developed this feeling when I was really young. I was an Army brat. We moved a lot. It's the people in it, but it's also the place. A city has a feel, it has a vibe, it has a personality. And I think that when I develop a co-working space, the first thing I go do is, of course, you have to read about what's there and what industries are there and all that stuff. What's the population and all that interesting stuff. What infrastructure do they have? But you also have to wander around and get a feeling for, are those people waving at you? How many language do you hear on the street? What's the population makeup? Is it old? Is it young? Is it brown? Is it white? What's happening here? How do people interact with each other? Those things are very different from place to place. And so my co-working space in Oosterhout is a family city. It's totally about family. It's all cozy. And if you don't have a family, then, your neighbors will be acting like your family. That's what Oosterhout is like. And so
Sounds cool.
It's wonderful. So the space that I have has, open beams. It's a very old building. I have a refrigerator. and an oven right in my meeting room. It's been known to happen that people are baking cookies during your meeting. Happens all the time. In the location, yeah, I know, absolutely. In the location in Den Bosch, it's a warehouse in the middle of an industrial complex. But here's the secret to Den Bosch. I'm going to tell everybody on your podcast the secret to Den Bosch in the Netherlands. In Den Bosch, everything is about fun. It's about fun. They are fun. They want to have fun, and that's why they do stuff. And so the way you develop a co-working space where it's all about fun is very different than the way you develop a co-working space in a place where it's all about family. In Reizenhout, it's all about that local community. In Amsterdam, it's all, every city, it's about something else. And one of the things that I think is really important to do when you start a co-working space is figure out what's it about there. And you need to work with that energy. A place has a ton of energy, which you can have for free if you will align for it. That's,
So I guess people should tap into where they are and the vibe from the community before they really try to position and market a space, because the space at the end of the day is all about the people and where those people are, the community that they're in. So I think people shouldn't overlook the value that those people and the community have, which is what we were speaking about earlier. So I think that's great. I'm really happy that you could kind of explain some of those things for everyone listening. But I think the conversation isn't over. I guess this conversation should continue. You, as you said, are really active in the co-working scene through co-working. Was it .com?
Coworking.com. Coworking.com is the original organization and the European Co-working Assembly.
Okay. So who was the final question before we kind of wrap it up? Who is the Co-working Assembly for?
Yeah, the co-working, the European Co-working Assembly is specifically to give a voice to and defend the interests of European co-working. European co-working, as I said, the place is important. European co-working has a very different face than American co-working, and American co-working really dominates the conversation at this point. It's not on purpose, it's because there's more of them. But that, I think, is really important, the identity of the European Assembly, and that those spaces get together and talk to each other and talk to the world with one voice.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on the forecast. Of course, we'll be speaking more often, considering that I'm also really keen and active on the co-working scene, and I'm going to be playing, having a closer role with you on the assembly, and of course, we meet up a lot of co-working conferences and forums and discussions. So that's great. And I'd love, as I said, to keep this conversation going, keep the forecast going, so we can connect with more people. You, of course, are on social media. What's the best way for people who are really interested in co-working or, media or companies? How can people contact you?
I think probably anybody who wants to drop me an email at, I'm going to do info at, because Jeannine is tough to spell. But info at opencoworking.org, I think, is probably the fastest way to get a hold of me. The most complete way to get a hold of me is on about.me under JVD Linden. Okay. And the reason for that is because I keep my About Me page, I try and keep current with all of my links where people can find me. Because I get very scattered on social media. I can be found on Twitter at Kamerad52 under the name De Kamer. But see, most of my internet presence is in Dutch. I am in the Netherlands. And so for people who are worried about the spelling, you should go to about.me at JVD Linden, and you'll find me there.
Great. Well, thanks again for joining the forecast. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. We'll stay in touch, and it's also a goodbye from me, Alex. Thanks.
So long, Alex.
Okay. Bye. Bye.